Britain is on the brink of yet another shocking betrayal, and this time it comes straight from the hands of the man who claims to want the best for the country, Labour leader Keir Starmer. The revelation that one of his closest friends, Philip Sands KC, has been working on behalf of Mauritius in the Chagos Islands dispute has sent shockwaves through political circles, raising the question, is Starmer selling out British sovereignty right before our eyes? This scandal is about more than just political manoeuvring. This is about handing over British territory without the consent of the people, without consultation, and without transparency. The Chagos Islands, a critical British overseas territory, hold immense strategic value, housing the vital UK-US military base on Diego Garcia. But in a move that has left many stunned, Labour has signed a deal to relinquish sovereignty over the islands to Mauritius, leaving Britain to pay £9 billion in lease payments to retain military access. And the real scandal? This entire deal was quietly approved by the Biden administration, raising serious concerns over whether the UK is truly acting in its own best interest or merely following orders from Washington. The deeper we look, the more this entire affair reeks of corruption, collusion, and betrayal. But let's take a step back. How did this all come to light? The answer lies in the actions of Philip Sands KC, a lawyer described as one of Keir Starmer's closest friends. Sands has been involved in the legal fight against Britain's control of the Chagos Islands, openly representing Mauritius in the dispute. But the most damning evidence came when he was photographed on the islands themselves, without UK government permission, raising the Mauritian flag and declaring victory. A legal mind who has worked alongside Starmer, actively celebrating the removal of British sovereignty from a strategic territory, is enough to make even the most ardent Labour supporters stop and ask, who is Starmer really working for? The backlash was immediate and explosive. Political commentator Madeline Grant wasted no time in branding Sands' actions as treachery and slamming Starmer for his eagerness to offload sovereign territory without a fight. And she wasn't alone. Public anger erupted as questions mounted over why this deal was made in the first place, and why it was rushed through with minimal debate and zero input from the British people. At the core of the controversy lies the £9 billion lease agreement, an astonishing amount of money that Britain will now have to pay just to maintain military access to an island that was already under British control. This raises an urgent question. Who truly benefits from this arrangement? Mauritius's own Prime Minister, Navin Ramgoolam, has now come out against the deal, calling it a sellout and demanding it be renegotiated. He is particularly furious over a clause that allows Britain to unilaterally extend the lease for an extra 40 years, something he insists was not part of the agreement. The cracks in Labour's so-called historic agreement are already beginning to show. What was supposed to be a seamless transition of power is now turning into an international dispute, with Mauritius's leadership turning against Starmer, even as Labour tries to present the deal as a diplomatic success. But perhaps the most damning blow came from within Labour's own ranks. Sir Chris Bryant, the Science Minister, has directly contradicted Starmer's justification for the deal. Labour has claimed that relinquishing the Chagos Islands was a national security necessity, arguing that an international agency could strip Britain of control over the Diego Garcia base if sovereignty wasn't transferred. But Bryant has now blown that claim out of the water, stating in no uncertain terms that the International Telecommunication Union, ITU, has no power to interfere with the UK's military spectrum. This means Labour's main excuse for surrendering British territory was a complete and utter fabrication. Shadow Armed Forces Minister Mark Francois wasted no time tearing into Labour's deception, calling the entire rationale utter nonsense. If the ITU cannot dictate military communications, then why did Labour rush to sign away British land? Why was this massive geopolitical shift done without public debate? But if you think that's bad, wait until you hear what the Chagosians have to say. The people most affected by this decision, the 400 Chagosians who have fought for years to maintain their British identity, have been ignored, cast aside, and left without a voice. For decades, the Chagosians have suffered forced displacement, broken promises, and political exploitation. Many of them still consider themselves British, and yet Starmer has treated them as nothing more than an inconvenient detail in his political calculations. One 70-year-old islander told The Telegraph, "I oppose this deal. I am British, and the Chagos Islands must remain British." This wasn't just a few disgruntled voices. This was hundreds of people pleading for their homeland, their rights, and their sovereignty to be respected, and Labour refused to listen. Even Reform UK's Zia Yusuf has come out swinging, slamming the deal as appalling and condemning Labour for pushing through an agreement without any consultation or democratic mandate. Yusuf's words cut straight to the heart of the issue. They have not sought permission, they have not sought a mandate, nor have they sought permission from anyone whose lives are going to be affected by this. Chagos. This is the core of the betrayal. This isn't about some abstract diplomatic agreement. This is about the British government handing over land, ignoring its people, and making backroom deals with foreign powers, all while expecting the British taxpayer to foot the bill. And let's not forget who orchestrated this entire affair. Keir Starmer, a man who has repeatedly claimed to fight for British values, a man who has promised to put the country first, and yet, when the time came to stand firm on British sovereignty, he folded without hesitation. But as this scandal continues to unravel, the question now is, will the British people stand for this betrayal? The anger is only growing, and the calls for accountability are getting louder. Starmer may have hoped that this deal would go unnoticed, that he could sweep this surrender under the rug, but the reality is far from that. The truth is out, the backlash is real, and the fight for British sovereignty is just beginning. Now, as the nation watches, one thing remains clear. Keir Starmer's credibility is hanging by a thread. The storm surrounding Keir Starmer's Chagos betrayal is far from over. In fact, it's only getting worse. With each passing day, more damning revelations emerge, painting a picture of a political leader willing to trade British sovereignty for personal and political convenience. But the British people are not blind, and this scandal is spiralling out of Labour's control. While Starmer desperately tries to avoid the backlash, the outrage continues to grow. British sovereignty has been quietly signed away, a key military stronghold is now in foreign hands, and the very people who have lived through decades of displacement and hardship have been silenced once again. And at the centre of it all, a man whose closest ally literally celebrated the removal of the Union Jack from British territory. Let's take a hard look at what has just happened. The Labour Party, without a referendum, without a mandate, and without public support, gave away British land. The UK is now paying £9 billion in lease fees to continue using a base that was already ours. And the justification for this entirely avoidable humiliation? A national security excuse that was just exposed as a blatant lie. Even Mauritius's own Prime Minister is furious, calling the deal a sellout and demanding a complete renegotiation. This isn't even a case of Starmer keeping his international allies happy. It's a case of him botching the entire deal so badly that even Mauritius wants out. And yet, despite all of this, Starmer refuses to answer the one simple question that the British people are demanding to know. Why? Why did he surrender the Chagos Islands so quickly? Why did he ignore the voices of the Chagosians? Why did his closest allies celebrate a foreign flag being raised over British land? Why is the UK paying billions to use a base it already controlled? These aren't minor concerns. These are earth-shattering betrayals of national sovereignty, military security, and democratic accountability. And yet, Starmer is silent. But here's what he doesn't understand. This scandal isn't going away. The British people are watching. They are angry, and they will remember.